Dark Discoveries is a podcast that dives into the darker corners of history, mystery, and the downright bizarre. We discuss real events that may include graphic details, adult themes, and strong language, not suitable for all ages. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
We're here to inform, entertain, and maybe make you laugh nervously in public, but never to glorify criminals or make light of victims. Our research is thorough, but hey, we're not perfect.
We don't claim to be historians, so if we get something slightly off, blame Jackie. All opinions are our own, and sometimes even those are questionable.
All right, welcome back to Dark Discoveries. I'm your host, Jimbo.
And I'm Dustin.
Dustin, by now, hopefully people have listened to part 1 and 2 of Could Jack the Ripper Have Been H.H. Holmes? In this third part, we are going to try to prove or disprove that Holmes was the Ripper.
Let's dive in.
I like to call this part 3, Fact, Fiction, Myth, or Legend.
See, now I probably should have said, let's dive in. That's what happens. You don't have a script.
Right. So let's go ahead and talk about what we know as facts of this case. Okay. Fact 1, we know that Jack the Ripper has been attributed to at least 5 murders.
5 from, what was it, August to November of 1888?
Right. The killings, they were very brutal. And they were almost, urgent to a degree, like I have to get this done. I have to get it done quick. And they were also very surgically performed, if you will. So somebody with medical knowledge would have had to do these murders.
Possibly, yeah.
And it looks like he's perfecting his craft as he goes. If you notice, he starts off, we call it
probably just
shallow, but
yeah,
I mean,
probably just, slits her throat and kind of gets the thrill of murder, does his thing.
I didn't get caught.
Yeah.
Let me up my game. So as you see the murders go on and on and on, it gets more brutal and brutal and brutal. And then that last one that he's attributed to is just like straight carnage out of a movie.
But you have to remember that last one was under I'm not going to say it wasn't under darkness, but that was kind of in a shelter where he had a chance to.
He was in a private room. He was enclosed.
Really perform what he wanted to do versus.
And the stuff that they found at that scene is so disturbing. He took his time with her.
Absolutely.
So that's a very scary. What about Holmes? The facts about Holmes. Number 1, we know he built the murder castle. That's not.
But was it to murder or was it to con?
Well, we know he murdered.
But no murders were actually contributed to happening inside of the castle as far as I know. There's no evidence. Now, there may be proof of some evidence afterwards, but they can't pinpoint it happening actually in the castle.
Well, let's just say the castle had trap doors. It had gas chambers. It had an incinerator.
Maybe the gas chambers were just.
It had the basement pit, with the lime and acid baths and all that, where he could easily dispose of bones and all that.
Yeah, but he also was a con man and wanted to build those, fake doors. Who knows? Those brick walls that those doors went into maybe slid, and that's where all the merchandise he conned people out of was. Maybe he was going to put in a heating system. Well, yeah, they had heaters back then.
Murder castle.
But that was something that.
What do you want a T-shirt that says? My parents went to the murder castle and all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
Yeah, but that's what the media went after, not what he was calling it. So he's not going to go around calling it his murder castle. It's just his castle.
Yeah. So, but it's believed, and he confessed that he killed. I think he confessed to 27 people.
5 of them were confirmed to be still alive. So his credibility is not there. He was a pathological liar.
But let's think about it. He was very.
He was manipulative. He was very charming.
He was a skilled manipulator. But he also studied medicine, and where he was stealing the cadavers and dissecting them. So he has some medical knowledge, and he was a pharmacist, so he knows some of the nuances of the drugs.
He knew how to use some chloroform.
Right. So at first glance, these two men, they appear completely separate entities.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely
separated by miles, oceans.
Yeah, separated by the pond,
and methods,
as they would call it.
Right, across the pond. But you know what? Let's take a closer look and see if it's really that far-fetched. So Jack the Ripper's murders, they were unique in their savagery. He primarily killed prostitutes that we know of. Then he would skillfully remove organs. That was done with shocking precision. I mean, some of the stuff that he was taking, like he took the one lady's kidney, he sliced off ears, he removed their uteruses. So he's very, very
which could
skillful.
fall into wanting to get certain organs to look at, to dissect, to see how they worked, because that's how they figured out how the human body worked back then, was by dissecting human bodies and figuring out how things functioned, what happens with and without, what they do.
Right. And the authorities, they thought that he would have had to have some sort of medical background because of the way he was taking out the organs. His knowledge of the anatomy of the body was so skilled that they're like, this guy has had to have some sort of training or something, because nobody just comes in here and does this.
Was it skill or luck?
Luck.
I guess if you're going for a uterus, you kind of got to know where it's at. Maybe a kidney you get by accident.
Dustin's still looking for the uterus. Right?
You get a kidney maybe by accident, but.
Right. But, he even sent letters that taunted the police, allegedly. But I think at least two of those letters are probably attributed to Jack the Ripper. It's pretty easily like the Dear Boss letter, and I think it's the Saucy Jack postcard, Jackie postcard. I think those two are probably the ones. Even though people have claimed that they wrote them, are they just saying that they wrote them to get the publicity?
Yeah, there's never been a deathbed confession where somebody claimed to something they never did.
Right. So despite the best efforts of the authorities in Scotland Yard, Jack the Ripper was never caught.
Vanished without a trace.
Vanished in thin air just as mysteriously as he had begun his killings. Very interesting. Was it 5 short months?
Yeah,
I think.
It was August, was it like the 29th? So the late August to like November 9th?
Like only 3 months, almost 4 months. Yeah.
It was a very short window.
Right. Okay, so what about Holmes? We know Holmes was a scammer. He seduced, he was a ladies' man.
Somehow,
I can't believe it. Have you ever noticed he
smelled like smegma, but he could get all these women.
All the nerds that, they always get the good looking women. And he murdered, with chilling ease. So he was one of those ones, again, kind of like Jack the Ripper. He did it with ease.
Yep, like it's a chloroform. And if he did have murders happen in the castle, because I'm not going to call it a murder castle, because that's not what it was. You have, gas that you can, poison people with as they sleep, and they're dead by the time you go get to them.
Well, I'm going to call it the murder castle because we know he murdered in there. So, but his murder castle, it was completed just in time for the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. But I didn't know this until I was watching the American Ripper documentary, which I'm still got 2 episodes to go. But I mean, some information came out of that may have swayed my mind. But he added a 3rd level to the murder castle for the World's Fair.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Can you imagine? Why would you add a 3rd level?
He could swindle somebody out of, that was his thing. He got to pay for it.
They said 27.1 million people attended the World's Fair that year.
It was an opportunity to make money.
1 in every 4 Americans went to the fair in Chicago. 1 in 4. That is ridiculous. But it went from I think May to October, May to November. Something like that. There was a 5-month window, I do believe.
I'm pretty sure we covered it, but I don't have the exact dates. But it was a 3 or 6 month exposition.
So his castle, his murder castle, it was a twisted maze of death and confusion. It kind of reminded me, like I said, of the Winchester House when we were covering the episode when you did it. But his victims, they ranged from employees to his lovers to unsuspecting travelers. So he was just looking for any opportunity to murder somebody, basically.
Anything he could con and swindle, he was going to get.
Let me ask you, why do you think he was so fascinated with death?
I don't know if it was so much fascinated with death or just that was the easy way to swindle somebody. And
do you think it was still all part of his insurance fraud? or
I'm gonna say he
selling the
found
organs and skeletons for money. To,
Yeah,
like the
there was going to be
universities.
something that he was going to profit from a dead body.
So when Holmes was arrested in 1894, he did confess to 27 murders, though some estimate the range to be into the hundreds, which Dustin had already said that some of those people were found alive. I think 5 of them, if I remember correctly.
Same thing like the Holtons that he got the pharmacy from. He allegedly killed them, but they lived into the 1900s. So
Can you imagine, though, it'd be like, oh, I killed this person. And you're like, no, you didn't. I'm right here.
Yeah.
Is this somebody that he knew, or is it just somebody he pulled out of a newspaper? You know what I mean? That's very interesting, too. I wonder if it's somebody that was a close contact of his.
I think it's just a name. So he knew he swindled them, and it was just there, and he just regurgitated the information.
I wonder if he confessed to killing of any of his alleged alias names that he used.
They were probably a real person.
That's what I was going to
say.
say. Yeah, he probably had that documentation and everything.
You kill them, and you get their birth certificate, and it's probably a little early for Social Security cards. But if they did, he was going to take advantage of it.
Right. So like the Ripper, he was elusive, cunning, and enjoyed psychological games, which you can see that a lot just from the little stuff that I've seen and read about him. So Dustin, how did this theory emerge that Holmes could be the Ripper?
So it really started with his great-grandson.
Great-great-grandson.
Great, yeah.
Jeff Mudgett.
Yep. He supposedly started doing some research at a young age, had some documentation, which I just find it hard to believe. A lot was left behind by him for family to find because he wasn't in what his kid originally, great-great-grandson was still kind of out of the New Hampshire, Vermont area where he grew up.
Right. So is he a descendant of his first wife, Clara? Was it Clara?
It'd have to be.
I don't know. You never know how many kids this man had.
I know he had the one child early, so I'm guessing it's an offspring of his first child because, I believe he's from the Northeast. Any other kids would have been in the Chicago area. So
in 2003, Jeff Mudgett, he said, hey, I unearthed this family diary suggesting that Holmes traveled to London in 1888. The diary contained supposedly confessions and details of the Ripper murder. So Jeff launches an investigation, which ends up being the American Ripper. If you haven't watched it, it's a great 8-part episode about is Holmes Jack the Ripper. Dustin's starting to watch it.
I've watched some of it. I watched it when it originally came out, so it's going back refreshing. But the more I've read into it, if you just have a theory and you can make about anything work with it. So it just felt like there was a lot of grasping for straws on this to where there is some information, but it's like, let's try to make it fit. Let's, put that square peg in a round hole.
All I'm going to say
even if we have to, whittle it around to make it work.
All I'm going to say is you need to watch the rest of it because you're only 2 episodes in and you skip stuff. So you can't skip stuff when it's a documentary like that. You're going to miss the important stuff. So he launches this investigation, becomes a History Channel television series, American Ripper. Could this newly found evidence mean that Holmes actually took his early experiments of murder across the Atlantic before perfecting them in time for the World's Fair at the Murder Castle?
You have to remember, so it's 1887. He's starting to build the castle. We know he wants to con people. We know that he has to have his hands on it. He's kind of an egomaniac. Is he going to take time from hiring and firing all these people and conning people out of merchandise and money and products to go get on a boat that's going to take him roughly 10 to 12 days?
No.
From the time he leaves Chicago.
It won't.
Yes, it will. By the time he leaves Chicago on a train to New York City is 2 to 3 days by rail. You can get as fast as 5 to 7 days.
5 to 6 days on the fastest
ship.
Right.
But most we're going to take you a little bit longer. So 7 to 10 days is probably what you're looking at, plus about 4 to 5 hours once you get into Liverpool to get to London on a train. There's no direct flights. This is boats.
That's right.
Things have to line up. And that's if you're getting off the boat, you're getting off the train, getting on the boat, going overseas, or you get to New York, you take a few days to explore New York City, then you get on the boat.
Did he kill anybody while he was in New York City? There is allegations that he did. So we'll talk about it. I got some more stuff in my notes. But
anything that happens that is remotely close, they're going to want to associate to kind of hop onto that.
Let's think about this. I'm no construction worker, neither are you. But if you're building something of that magnitude, like the murder castle, right? Let's just say you start with the foundation. How long is it going to take for you to do the foundation, have it settled? Like around here, they can do it in 90 days now, put up the frame of the house, the foundation, siding.
But we're talking about a bigger scale building in a different time. Saying. But there is a lot of immigrants that come into work that are always looking for work. You can hire, not like today.
Right, but what about about getting the raw materials you need to build that? It's going to take time to get that into. So what I'm saying is, if there's a period of time that he could have ordered the stuff, it's not there. It's plausible.
It's plausible, but
it's even possible. Right?
It's plausible.
Is it possible, though, Dustin?
Anything's possible.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, so finally, he agreed. It does beg to differ. Could it be possible? Could Scotland Yard been on to Holmes when he was over there, and that's why the murder stopped and he came back? There is evidence of him signing shipping, I don't want to say ledgers, if you will.
So now you're going after some of the similar same name.
Well, that's the issue I'm saying. So, but were they onto him so bad that he decided, got uncomfortable? He's like, I got to get out of here. I got to get back to where I'm at. Number one, my castle's being built. But number two, these guys are on me right now. So that is the one thing I do have that points that he's not is he just is poor soul that has Dustin's name being now dragged through the mud because he has the same name as a serial killer.
Yeah. Like I said, there's not going to be a whole lot of surnames back then. I'm going to go on a limb and say.
Right. So Dustin, let's talk about the case that Holmes is the Ripper. Okay. What are some facts and coincidences that Holmes is the Ripper? All right. Number one for me, it's the timing. Holmes does disappear from the U.S. record for several months in 1888, exactly when the Ripper murders are being committed.
But let's remember, a lot of this castle stuff, you almost got me saying murder castle here. A lot of
we will by the end of this podcast.
He didn't put his own name, his wife's mother's name. He wasn't tying it to himself. He very well could have still been here doing his thing the whole time, but flying under the radar because his name wasn't on the document.
But if you look at the actual records, he does sign his name all throughout that process. Till July 4th, 1888 is when the last one is signed. Okay? There's nothing else in the records until I think it's April of 89. And guess what happened in that short months that there's no record?
So what do you need to sign in April of, up until that point? You've got, if there was a building permit, it's already been done.
But they were bringing lawsuits against him too. So that's another reason he could have fled.
Then there would have been news articles that, hey, we're going after this guy and we can't find him. We don't have that. We don't have that tangible proof.
But you do. But that's back in April when he comes back. That's why he takes off to Texas. That's why he takes off and does some insurance fraud in St. Louis. That's why I think he even goes out to Denver and does some of that stuff.
He does, but I think that's all going to be, I'd have to go back to the timelines. I think that's all a little bit later.
Right, Dustin. But we are in the evidence that he is the Ripper at the moment. Not that he's not the Ripper. We're doing that he is the Ripper, okay? So did he have the medical knowledge? Would you say he had the medical knowledge
Absolutely
to do that?
Did.
What the Ripper did? I believe so too. He removed the organs, dissected. They even said that he took a baby home with him when he was up there in Michigan, I think, at the University of Michigan, because he liked cadavers so much.
Well, you didn't really, cadavers were at a premium. Then not every medical school could have enough human cadavers to properly do research, which was still very controversial to be dissecting humans at that point.
What about the psychology of the Ripper? Does Holmes fit the psychology? Both killers were egotistical, sadistic, and methodical. So I say that's another check mark for Holmes being it.
Yeah, but when you get into to kind of motivation, H.H. Holmes was more of a, like I said, going for financial gain. Jack the Ripper was more sexual driven, whether that was because he didn't like women, wasn't happy with prostitutes.
Let me ask you a question.
Maybe he was a pimp and you take out a few prostitutes and you make more money.
Were any of the Ripper victims sexually assaulted?
But they were more sex driven.
I'm asking you, were any of the Ripper victims
not to my
assaulted?
knowledge, but doesn't mean that it's hard to say because they were prostitutes. So how can you prove if he had intercourse with them versus the John 10 minutes before he got there?
Well, because he removed most of their uteruses. Let's not forget, so there's not much evidence left. Okay. What about the handwriting analysis? Some claims Holmes's handwriting models letters attributed to the Ripper. In American Ripper, they say that the two letters, the Dear Boss and the Saucy Jackie letter or postcard, and I found this out too, that in the official archives, I believe it's over there in London, they don't have the original copies. They have been stolen and they have been missing this entire time. They have copies of the original. So I thought that was very interesting because there is a thumbprint and blood on that or DNA because they were like, can we test this? And they're like, well, we would, but
it's a copy.
Right. So they were like, well, some of the letters do, some of them don't. Then they talked about the linguisto of it. Like some of the words that were used in those letters are from an American version of English than the British version of English. So like over here, we would be using this word when in America, they would use this word. So that's another needle mover, just a little bit. Say, hey, this Ripper is probably an American. I'll say that much. And with all the immigrants coming in and out easily over there in Liverpool.
Yeah, both England, places were definitely a
open border
hub
right.
for immigrants. Chicago was growing after the fire. I mean, they're rebuilding industry. It's a huge meat producing town. So you have a lot of immigrants coming in to take those jobs. Whitechapel, kind of an industrial area, smoggy, you got guys working, you have to feed those furnaces to keep that coal going constantly. So.
And it's very convenient that the slummy area of Whitechapel was kind of like the slummy area of Chicago where Holmes was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to, if you're going to murder somebody, you're going to rob them. Do you go after affluent people or do you go after
Well, they probably go after people that their police aren't really going to care and search for with that they should.
Oh, another prostitute's missing.
Oh, bummer.
Well, let's really put a lot of time into that.
Right. So what about the travel records? I didn't know a lot about the travel records till I was watching the documentary series. It's possible. Is all I'm
possible,
saying.
But there's no hard evidence that's actual.
Something
Holmes.
I don't think I saw in that is if they took they have handwriting samples of Holmes. He wrote that confession in that diary that he gave to a judge and where he confessed everything. I don't know that I saw that they took what he wrote there with what was in the ledgers that he signed to get on a ship. But if you're trying to disguise your handwriting too,
and
it's pretty easily to do.
A lot of it was news clippings too. It looked like, and what you've seen from the American Ripper show, it wasn't always actual written text. It was, clips of different articles and headlines.
Right. The next thing I want to bring up is the diary. If this diary/journal, and I say a big if, this journal exists, where is it?
Well, I think somebody's looking for financial gain before they do anything.
If you had that and I had that and they published it and we bought it, you're making money off that too.
Yep. And you would think if
he says in there that there is confessions that he killed these ladies over in England, number one, it would say we know for certain that he was over there in England. There is no record here. You know what I'm saying?
But remember, what we know about what he confessed to did not match up to what really happened.
That's another thing I was going to say. So is he just saying he's Jack the Ripper because he's infatuated with Jack the Ripper?
Deathbed confession. He knows he's dying. So let me make my, I don't want to say legacy, but my persona, my myth, my legend even bigger by saying that I'm Jack the Ripper. And after I die, they're going to attribute that to me. Nobody else gets that fame but me. I take somebody else's. I'm conning the real Jack the Ripper out of his giving credit for his work, basically. It's sick, it's sadistic, but it's right in what he would do.
Right. What about Holmes's own words? Before his execution, Holmes said he was turning into the devil. Many believe that he confessed to far more than he let on, which I would probably agree with that. You know, he's not going to tell you everything.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's stroking his own ego.
Right. So that was our little case for him being Jack the Ripper. Now let's look at him for the case against him.
Oh, I should have been trying to convince you that he was Jack the Ripper. My bad.
So number one, my first and foremost thing that I put down is there's no definitive proof. There is absolutely no travel record that can confirm places Holmes in London in 1888 for certain. It's fun to think about, but there is no concrete proof that he was. Is it possible? Yes. Is there some circumstantial evidence that he was there? Yes. But for me, there's no definite proof.
So back then when you went overseas, you didn't have to have a passport.
Ain't that crazy?
But I mean, it's
you would just tell the captain, "Hi, I'm Jimbo," and they're like, "Okay," and they just wrote it on their ledger.
People are still immigrating to Ellis Island, probably still around that point, pretty heavy. So you would have to have some type of documentation to show, so you don't have to come back through immigration. There's going to be a little bit of gray area in there, but you didn't have to have it. But people of that time that had money, they were having passports, they were having the documentation, their names were on it. You knew they were going.
Strike two would be they seem to have different modus operandi. However, after watching that documentary, I wrote these notes a while ago. Ripper was a slasher and a dissector right off the get-go.
Yeah.
Holmes was more of a, let me gash you, and then I'll kill you. But come to find out, the Ripper basically either killed them or incapacitated them before he slashed them, because there is no blood splatter. It's not going all over the room. It was pulling underneath the bodies. And the doctor said the only way this happens is if you're dead. And so I don't know about this one. This is one that I'm throwing out there.
Like I said, the Ripper had to be quick because he was going out in public at night. If somebody's screaming, it's going to, raise attention. Kind of, I don't know how trains ran back then, because I know some of the last murders were under, kind of like a bridge, like a trestle. That would cover some noise, but how many trains were really running?
But he was doing it in broad daylight not broad daylight, but in the night in the backyard, close to these houses at some point.
So you have to incapacitate them to where you can pull off your crimes without them making noise. So I don't know if the train trestles, if that's a way to hide the noise or to hide in the shadows.
You got to remember, the police over there, they had a routine that they had to follow. They had to go from point A to point B to point C back to the square. If they weren't at a given station at a given time, they got fined. So is it so hard to think that Jack the Ripper, whoever they were, could time out when they left this post to go here, to go, and how much time he had for them to get back?
Oh, absolutely. If you're going to pull it off, out, like I said, in the open, because it wasn't broad daylight, it was dark, but in the open, you have to know the area. You have to know the routines.
Right. If
you just go blindly, that's just really reckless. And it's not typically going to be something that you're going to be able to pull off more than once.
Right. Well, you remember in the double murders, he said, I didn't get to finish cutting her ears off because I was interrupted. They almost caught me. So then he went and killed somebody else like 45 minutes later, a couple streets over.
Yeah.
Incredible. As far as we know, there are no British ties for Holmes. Any of his business partners, anything like that. We have no knowledge of any ties to Britain for him. For me, I titled this one, The Hoaxes and the Hype. The diary may be a complete fabrication or just a misunderstanding.
Like I said, that if you had the diary, there's money to be made, first of all. But why wouldn't you release it for somebody to see it? historical purposes.
Let me ask you this too. If they were to publish the journal that Holmes gave to the judge before he died, would you buy a copy?
So I would find a copy online for free. That's me, but
you're just like Holmes, you swindler.
So this is, a long time ago, and I just listened to a podcast about somebody forging Hitler's diaries. So who's to say that that judge didn't keep it? That's in his family, maybe made a copy, maybe put some other stuff in it, and then that's what it is. Because if they're profiting in the 80s over Hitler's, his own, and it was like multiple volumes of his personal diaries. If you had one that was linked to Jack the Ripper or H.H. Holmes and you could bridge that gap, you could make a lot of money. It's just there's a motive to fake it or to not.
And you never know what happens most times when we try to look at some records back in history, what's happened. They've been lost to fires, floods, time, earthquakes,
tornadoes,
theft.
Yeah, theft.
So
misplacing.
And then I put it here to the handwriting analysis. Handwriting analysis isn't always reliable, especially when you're looking at over 135 years ago handwriting samples. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, like I said, it's.
But Dustin, what if it's true? Imagine
plausible.
Imagine, just for a moment, if this theory is true that Holmes is Jack the Ripper. This means that Jack the Ripper escaped justice, came to America, and honed in on one and became one of the most prolific serial killers in our country. Imagine that a single man authored two of the darkest chapters in criminal history across two continents. It reframes everything we know about serial killers, linking two eras, two continents, and countless victims.
I believe that the Ripper coming to America is more plausible than Holmes going to London and doing this and coming back. Because there was the murder in New York City where they had, I'm guessing that the slashed X on the victim, which was kind of one of the things that the Ripper did. But if that was made public, there's always going to be copycats.
Right. Just like all the letters that were sent in.
So a third person could have came in trying to possibly copycat, didn't get the attention they wanted, or who knows, went on their own tear somewhere else that we didn't really link to it.
Right. So that was where my notes originally ended. Then I started watching American Rippers. I was like, there is just too much good information here not to share. So I started writing some stuff down. So Mary Mudgett, which is one of Holmes's cousins, she was found in a creek back when he was just a young lad. So this could be his first murder victim, his own cousin.
Well, what was it? Did you have the dates of both the cousins that drowned?
I don't. So, but there was a cluster of suspicious deaths there, but he even a 4-year-old boy also died by poison. But then there was O'Lear, I think is O'Lear Mudgett. He was another cousin of Holmes, death by drowning. He was 4 years old and 10 months. Holmes would have been 15 years old at this time.
I know the name that they went after originally wasn't the person who drowned. So it's almost like, are we talking a first cousin, third cousin twice removed?
They said that this is the house where Holmes used to stay all the time. He used to visit frequently, and it just happened to be, she drowned.
Did the 4-year-old drown and the other one come to save her and drown too?
No, this is two separate times.
I don't know if they gave dates or not. Because
they did that, but it's two different times. But that's crazy, dude. That's not a coincidence, I don't think. Records show that Holmes' transaction for properties in Chicago as well as a lawsuit from his first one the last one was in July of 88 was the last one. And then the first one back was April of 89. There's no records of him for that time frame, which is very interesting. It would say 6 to 7 weeks before the first Ripper murder happened after July 4th. So that gives him enough time to get over to London through Liverpool, commit these murders. Did he find out that the best way to commit these murders to get the satisfaction that he wanted was behind closed doors? Is that why he built the murder castle?
Well, the castle was already in production.
But the third floor wasn't.
Well, the most was going to happen in the basement and probably the second floor because that's what was mainly done. I think the third floor was just a way to get money from investors, con them, possibly build a third level to have some guests to bring in revenue. I don't think it was necessarily, and it's, if you're a killer, it's going to also bring in, young women coming in, which is kind of, I think, what was more his MO. You don't want to go after a grown man. The only, grown men that were really involved was, killing his partner.
Right. So it's very interesting that they found out that most of the Ripper victims were dead before he mutilated them, according to the pool of bloody and everything. And what was Holmes famous for doing?
He'd chloroform them.
And not only that, but he would sometimes just gas them to death and then dissect them. That puts Ripper and Holmes on the same playing field to me.
It's one of those, I still think the motives were different.
We talked about the timing of the attacks to avoid the police. Holmes's shipping records was from May of 89. So that's very crazy. The ships traveled, like Dustin said earlier, between 5 to 6 days if you got a fast steamer, 7, 8, or 9 days if you got one of the slower one. There was this shawl that we talked about, and I do believe that they cracked that finally, the 95% DNA. I think we talked about that maybe in my episode, but maybe it was in the episode we deleted before we recorded this third one again.
Yeah,
but there was a shawl that had DNA on it, and Jeff Mudgett gave his DNA to testing, and 95% of the DNA does not match. And he said, well, what about the other 5%? And they said, doesn't match either. So the DNA on this shawl from one of the victims of Jack the Ripper does not have any Holmes's DNA on it or any of his family members. That's not to say that it wasn't on there at one time, because you never know. She was a prostitute. It probably had a lot of DNA on that thing. So we'll leave it at that.
But I think that's where you're starting to get a little bit closer to the truth, in my opinion.
And I think one of the craziest things about the American Ripper series that I've seen so far was they took the 13 there's 13 eyewitnesses of Jack the Ripper, 13. And they said, oh, he has pale complexion, deep sunken eyes, blah, blah, blah. And they did this.
He's malnourished, not been in the sun.
But what I'm saying is
has a mustache.
They take it and they make a
composite sketch.
Thank you. And when she got done and she put that sketch up there next to H.H. Holmes, it's pretty convincing. Now, are they just doing that on TV to give ratings, to be like, oh, look, this could be?
Wouldn't be the first time.
No. But, they said they had the carrot mustache and all that. But to see that next to the actual picture of Holmes, it's pretty convincing. The other thing I found out is that Holmes had a concrete warehouse on the Chicago River where he purchased a lot of stuff to make concrete, the raw materials. But guess what? He never sold anything. What better way to easily dispose of a body than by just throwing it in the river, put on the concrete raincoat, the concrete boots, sleep with the fishes.
That or just bury them in concrete.
Right. So I wonder, with all the mob stuff going on in the 50s, 40s, and 50s, I would hate to see what's in the bottom of the Chicago River, because they said that they had to actually reverse the way the Chicago River flows because something about the sewage exploded or something, and they actually reversed it. It's called one of the greatest feats in modern day history that they actually reversed the entire river. But you think, like, even our oceans, how much of the ocean have we explored?
Oh, we've only known a small
like
fraction.
8% maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people have died through the mob, through Ripper, through Holmes?
Oh, the mob in New York ran concrete. They ran construction. I'm going to go on a limb and say that, let's be honest, a lot of the mob came from New York City. So I'm sure those practices came to Chicago. where the mob ran construction, illegal enterprises ran construction and concrete, and Chicago was booming.
Right.
So you're going to have probably a lot buried in Chicago.
If Holmes had this place and he was bringing in all this concrete, do you think it's possible that he brought some of his victims there to dispose of?
Well, if you get into...
Or lured them there and killed them there and they're just...
So allegedly, the castle had an incinerator, which he was trying to do some glass bending, so maybe it was related to that. Maybe it was a makeshift, cremation chamber, but it wasn't going to be enough heat at that time. They said if you tried to get...
You would have to... They go to 1,600 degrees.
Yep, and to get it for 1 hour, 1,600 degrees would deplete your wood supply or
they
your
said
coal supply.
You wouldn't have enough wood to keep it going for that long.
Yeah, you would just run yourself out. Now, coal burns hotter, so it could be coal, but I'm sure you're still going to go through a bunch of coal. But even then, for the technology at the time, it was going to leave big chunks of bone.
Right.
It would not burn it completely. So if that was the case, would you have that under the castle? Would you have that spread across Chicago? Would you go dump it in a river? Would you bury it in concrete?
Well, I'm glad you brought that point up because Holmes did come to Irvington, Indiana, which is not too far from where we are sitting right now. And he somehow, his business partner, Petzel, yeah.
Benjamin Peitzel.
He kills him for one. They were going to do the scheme. He kills him. And then he tells his wife, hey, look, they're going to be looking for these people. Let me have the kids. So he takes the 3 children of the Peitzels with him.
Yep.
And where we're sitting, Holmes had rented this house. I think it was for 5 days, October 5th through October 10th. I remember it said he was getting it ready for his sister coming into town. However, during that time, he had this huge wood-burning stove installed. And somebody asked him, they said, why are you installing this big wood stove, when we have gas now? And do you know what he said?
What's that?
He said, gas is not good for kids. Meaning, can't burn them, a gas stove. How demented is that?
Yeah, I know it's what, 15, 20 minutes from here, and they did find the remains. So
yeah, it was like a year. It was a year later that they found the petrified entrails of poor little Howard. I think he was 10-year-old boy. And they found it, and so again, he was incapacitated, and you know what? He was probably dissected, dismembered because he was burning him in that stove too. Now they went and took a cadaver dog to that area, that house. The house is no longer there. It's now on the property's there, but it's a new subdivision, new houses and all that. They took this cadaver dog and it laid down at this certain spot. And she said, if he lays down and he stays, then that means we got thing. And they're like, well, can he smell out 150-year-old corpses? She's like, yeah, that's why we train him through the deeper things. So they started excavating this, and they started finding lumps of coal.
Yeah.
Why is coal going to be there? Then they found 2 buttons like off a coat. And then they found a bone. And that's where I stopped watching before we started recording. So I don't know if it is Howard or it's not, but if I am Holmes and I go and I have to get rid of the rest of the evidence, I would bury that there. But my question is, if they found petrified entrails, why is he going to care? Yeah. He's moving on anyway. He only was there 5 days.
That's the thing is you have these aliases. You go across the country. You dispose of what you need to dispose of. You go on to the next town. Hopefully when they find it, it's late enough they don't really connect it to you.
Right.
If it's, 5-10 years later, do you remember what Holmes looked like, the guy that rented the house? And if you rented it to multiple people, of the time, a tall, skinny, charming person came and rented your house, wore a bowler hat, had a mustache.
I paid cash, probably.
How many people had mustaches back? Probably everybody.
So there were still 2 girls. And what does Holmes do with those 2 girls? They go to Toronto, and he basically puts them both in the same chest, and he locks it, and he drills a hole, and he puts a tube into the hole, and then hooks it to the gas.
Yeah.
Basically, he carbon monoxide on him. Holmes was evil. I mean, Ripper was evil too.
And did something happen that really pushed him over the edge? That's the
right. And to me, there is nothing. Don't get me wrong. All crime is bad, but there is nothing worse in my eyes than when you do something to a child.
Yeah, it's almost like something. A switch was flipped.
Something. He might have known his time was coming to an end because they were hot on his trail.
They were coming, but it's one of those you con. Did you just run out of, things to con, and you were trying to find some new way to get that with the insurance fraud?
Well, that's how he got caught down there in Texas, because they were going to do it, and they're like, because that's where he's building that second murder castle.
And, you steal horses back then.
Yeah, they were trying to sell those horses back in Chicago.
It's either you stay here or go there.
Right.
And stealing horses in Texas in that time would get you killed.
So let's look at a couple of the suspects of the Ripper. I only have a couple. One was John Pizer, the one that they called Leather Apron. They actually arrested this guy, and there was no evidence against him. And I think that the pandemonium that set in for the Ripper, they were looking for any American over there that they could capture.
Well, anybody,
butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, anybody. They had to pin this on somebody, because somebody was going to hang, no matter who it was, right or wrong. They were going to hang. Public fear going on around that time, and then you would have copycat killers, and then the media would just run wild like they do today. Just take a story, run it. Me and Dustin could be here. We came out with a story. I write one thing, he writes another thing. We both heard the same thing, but it's two different versions of the story.
I can change the research, the evidence, and manipulate you to think what I want you to think. Now,
there was a lodger. He's known as the Batty Street Lodger. He was an American. He was they found when he checked out, he left a medical bag, and inside the medical bag there was a sharp knife and 2 bloodstained caps. He never came back for that bag. So the lady says that, hey, I saw this guy come back, but it's been 25 years later he came back. So that makes me beg the pardon. It couldn't have been Holmes if Holmes died and was executed when they said he did. Yeah. Or was he? Is he in his grave? I didn't make it that far in the documentary. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can cover that here in a moment. I got that.
Oh, you got
notes,
that? So. And then the other one I had was Francis Tumblety. He was a snake doctor, go around just selling potions. Oh, this will cure cancer. It's just a bottle of water. But again,
sounds like somebody I know.
But again, there was no hard evidence against him. One thing they said is that the Ripper was about late 20s, early 30s. Tumblety was around 50. So he doesn't fit the eyewitness accounts. So I'm going to have to say Tumblety is not a good option for this. So Dustin, tell us about
So I think when we go back to who it was, the most logical person was going to be Aaron Kaminsky. He was there. His DNA was linked to it. Either he was the last John before she was killed, or he was the killer. He was known to be mentally unstable, had violent tendencies.
But you can say that about anybody in Whitechapel at that time.
You can, but that's the closest thing that we have, that DNA evidence going to him. A lot of it fit the Ripper profile. So that's my thought on who it could be. That's the closest we have. This is one of those mysteries.
I think if I'm never going to know. If I'm going to think who my suspect is, I think his name was Walter Sickert. He was a painter, and he was also, what's the word I'm looking for? Impotent.
Yeah.
And they think that he took out his aggressions on prostitutes because he couldn't enjoy life.
So it wouldn't have been his. So his DNA wouldn't have been on her.
Right. So, Dustin,
we're going to jump to 2017. So this whole thing, we're getting Holmes's body exhumed. He was buried under concrete, so it had a little bit of work to be done. He was afraid that he was going to be grave robbed, which was a big thing at the time. John Dillinger killed in 1934. The family was afraid that they were going to rob his grave. So he had concrete poured over his grave. Not unheard of, especially for the time. This guy was a new sensation, you're going to have people that want to profit from that. Like people in the 30s wanted to take John Dillinger's body, show it off, and charge people to see it. You get the opportunity to steal H.H. Holmes's body. Is somebody going to do it? Hell yeah, they're going to do it. They're going to profit. They're going to take him. Look at this. This is America's, even though he wasn't technically America's first serial killer, there's
probably one of the most famous ones.
He was the first well known. So they get him up. They say the mustache, everything preserved. So it looks like him. They do the testing and confirm that was Jack the Ripper.
Thanks. Thank you for listening.
It was
my job here is done.
It was H.H. Holmes's body. It was confirmed. He did not escape his death because there was, he staged his own, disappearance. He didn't. He paid for his crimes. He was executed. He was hung. He was buried. He was dug up and confirmed. So we know he's gone. Jack the Ripper, we don't know why he stopped. Did he come to America? Did he take his stuff somewhere else to a smaller town? Did he just stop cold turkey? Most of these guys don't stop cold turkey. Maybe he was an older guy. Like maybe he was the guy in his 50s.
Well, look at the BTK killer.
Maybe
they just caught him because he couldn't stay away. He had to keep egging on the police, even after all these years where there has nothing happened for like 30 years. And what's he do? He sends a letter or something to the, I'm still here. You never caught me, blah, blah, blah. And what happens?
And now,
got caught.
Now there's so much technology. You didn't have cameras on every corner.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't. Now I think they say if you go in London, you're caught in a camera no matter where you go. So there's no proof that he stopped. There's no proof he kept going. So did he die? Did he go somewhere else?
Did he go to another country and just keep killing?
You go in and you change what you're doing. It's very possible that he could have landed in New York, put his mark on one victim, because I think that's all that they can confirm, and you go somewhere else. You change your
You could go
method.
up to Canada. You could go down to South America. You could go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, Dustin, on a percentage, what percent do you think, out of 100, what percent do you think that Holmes could have been the Ripper? 50-50, 20-80, 0?
I think it's 0. I don't see enough evidence. Nothing for me. When you're watching these shows where they have an agenda, they're going to manipulate and only present to you where they want to go. They're not really looking to give you unbiased information. They're looking for a way to get you to tune in every single week to keep watching that show so they can pay for what it costs to produce it.
Right.
And then maybe make some money.
So for me, there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that he could have been, but I think the evidence against it is far greater. So as much as I would love to say that he was Jack the Ripper, I'm going to have to say no. Probably I'll even go 30-70 because there's still a possibility. If we could find any records of any of his travels,
a picture
that puts him over there, anything that puts him in London at that time, then I'm all, but that goes up to about 80%.
The U.S., it was open territory for him. London, you got to have tangible, hardcore proof.
Right. And now here's Jackie Johnson with this week's missing child information.
Hello, this is Jackie Johnson, and I apologize I was not part of this performance this week, but I am here for the missing child case update. We are highlighting New Sweden, Maine this week with Stephanie Dameron. She was born October 6th of 2010. She went missing September 24th of 2024. She's a female, 130 pounds, green eyes, brown hair, Caucasian, height 5 foot. She went missing in New Sweden, Maine, last seen wearing blue jeans and a long sleeve blue shirt and black Harley-Davidson hiking boots. The FBI is currently issuing a $15,000 reward for safe return or any information leading to arrest and prosecution of anyone involved in her disappearance. If you have any information, please call the Maine State Police, Hulleton Barracks at 1-800-924-2261 or the FBI's tip line at 1-800-225-5324. We will post her picture on our social medias. Please, if you see something, say something. Let's bring the babies home.
Well, that concludes our Ripper Holmes series. We hope you enjoyed it as much fun as we had researching it. If you'd like to follow us, we are Dark Discoveries Podcast. You can follow us on any major podcast platform. We're all over the social medias. We're on TikTok, Instagram. We're on Facebook. So hopefully you come along and join us for the rest of the ride. And just remember, the deeper you dive, the darker it gets.